In this video, I'm going to give you a May 2018 disclosure update covering newly released evidence from the UFO program and the Pentagon revealing some very unusual and strange capabilities of the UFO phenomenon. Robert Bigelow, under a Defense Intelligence Agency contract during the UFO program and the Pentagon, hired a team of 46 scientists and investigators along with dozens of other support personnel to study the UFO phenomenon. This subcontracting entity under Bigelow was called BASS, which stands for Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. BASS specified 12 focal points for studying the UFO phenomenon. Some of those were propulsion, lift, degree of stealthiness, and so forth. Amazingly, 2 of the 12 focal points is human effects and human interface. I'm going to focus on the human interface and human effects aspect of the study of UFOs. Of course, this is referencing people who had interactions with the UFOs and the kind of impact that interaction had on them. The following is a statement from a senior manager of BASS. Just to reiterate, BASS was a Robert Bigelow entity subcontracted by the Defense Intelligence Agency to study UFOs. One of the major successes of BASS was in adopting the novel approach of utilizing the human body as a readout system for dissecting interactions with the UFO phenomenon. This novel approach aimed to circumvent the increasing evidence of deception and subterfuge by the UFO phenomenon in that multiple eyewitnesses co-located in the same vicinity frequently reported seeing widely different events. The evidence was multiplying that the UFO phenomenon was capable of manipulating and distorting human perception, and therefore eyewitness testimony of UFO activity was becoming increasingly untrustworthy. What blows me away with this revelation by a former manager of BASS is the BASS entity comprised of 46 scientists and investigators along with dozens of other support personnel to study the UFO phenomenon. This is a lot of manpower. This is a lot of PhDs digging into this subject. And through their sophisticated methodology of researching the phenomenon, they came to the same conclusions as the UFO literature does in regards to the UFO phenomenon's ability to distort human perception. So what is meant by distorting or manipulating human perception is, for example, there'll be a couple people witnessing a UFO, or maybe even a couple people in a plane who are chasing a UFO, perhaps, and for example, maybe one person will see one thing and another person will see something else. The indication seems to be that whatever intelligence is behind these UFOs can make one person see something and the other person see something else. The UFO intelligence is seemingly able to alter our consciousness. Another example of how the UFO intelligence could manipulate or alter our consciousness is there have been instances, for example, where 2 people, or for example, will be looking in the same precise direction. One person will see a manifestation of the UFO phenomenon, and the other person won't, inexplicably. Beyond the UFO phenomenon having the capacity to alter visual perception of people interacting with the UFO phenomenon, it has been recorded by Luis Elizondo when he was on the Coast to Coast AM program with George Knapp. He said that while he worked for ATIP, it came across his desk that he would read reports where the UFO phenomenon was able to distort the perception of time. So in one instance, for example, it would be as if time stood still when the individual was interacting with the UFO phenomenon. In other instances, it would be like someone would check their watch and they'd notice, holy moly, it's been 30 minutes. How did 30 minutes transpire? It feels like it's been 2 seconds. So even Luis Elizondo, the former head of ATIP, the UFO program in the Pentagon, was able to verify through his own sources that what the UFO literature of old has conveyed to us all has proved to be accurate, that the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon is capable of causing missing time in human consciousness. I'm going to provide an excerpt of an interview with Grant Cameron from the amazing YouTube channel UFO Hub. Link is in the description. You got to check that interview out. And then I'm going to give my opinion on Grant's opinion.
Confirmed the fact that you really can't tell anything by a video. You can watch the video for 70 years, every day. All it's going to tell you is it's pretty strange and we probably didn't build it. But it doesn't tell you who's flying it, where they're from, why they're here, what's the message. And I started to deal with experiencers, and I've spent probably since 2012, so the last 6 years, basically dealing with experiencers, people who've had experiences, to find out, did you get a message? Did they tell you what's going on? Stuff like that.
So Grant conveys that the only real way to learn about the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon is to communicate with experiencers who have interacted with the phenomenon on an intimate level, and people that have been abducted and so forth. And I think that might not pan out the way Grant Cameron thinks it will. And the reason is this. One has to make the distinction between what the phenomenon wants to reveal to us and what the phenomenon truly is. To make this more clear, imagine someone is abducted, brought on a ship, and interacts with the phenomenon. Okay? Does that mean, so whatever the phenomenon communicates to the abductee, does that mean that reflects the true intentions of the phenomenon? Not necessarily. Does that mean it reflects the true nature of the phenomenon? Not necessarily. Does that mean does that mean that the phenomenon is revealing anything accurate about itself? Not necessarily. Maybe it is creating something akin to a hologram to get human beings to perceive precisely what it wants to be perceived, which may not be consistent with what it actually is and what its intentions actually are. We don't even know if the intelligence behind the UFOs are physical at all. You know, even if you look at the case with Travis Walton, in my opinion, the most reputable abduction incident in the history of ufology. Travis Walton will tell you, I went on a UFO, I saw the beings, they were physical, and so forth. But how do we know that all of that was not anything more than a spiritual entity creating a physical-like experience so that Travis Walton would perceive what the spiritual entity wanted him to perceive? And in this incident, assuming it was a spiritual entity, that spiritual entity wanted Travis Walton to perceive something physical. So that physicality that Travis Walton was perceiving is an illusion and has nothing to do with the actual core of the phenomenon. Now, maybe I've gone a little over the top with portraying this phenomenon as completely spiritual and nothing biological. Perhaps the truth is more in the middle, that a good portion of the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon are biological beings just like you and me. The factor that differentiates us from them, one of the major factors would be that they are hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us, and so they have evolved in conscious ways, and so they can do things, they can have an impact, manipulate, distort our consciousness in ways we can't even begin to fathom, because those are capacities and abilities that other races develop through evolution and perhaps through even manipulation of their own DNA. That is a natural course for the other civilizations that we just don't have any grasp of. So we are experiencing these bizarre experiences, missing time, one person sees one thing, another person sees another, because of their ability to just have a control over our consciousness. I think I summed up pretty well in a May 5th tweet the problem with us primitive human beings trying to learn about the phenomenon behind the UFOs when you consider how primitive our consciousness is compared to their consciousness. Here's the tweet. The ability for UFOs to manipulate human perception is highly disturbing. This doesn't mean that the entities controlling them are necessarily nefarious. It just means that unearthing the mystery and determining their agenda is made more difficult by 1000%. I will end this video with a quote from Jim Semivan taken from the foreword of the book Secret Machines Chasing Shadows. Link of that book is in the description. The phenomenon seems to work on another level, consciousness, dimensions, unknown to our science. A friend once remarked to me that perhaps the phenomenon seems to exist at the nexus of quantum mechanics and consciousness. If that is so, and I personally believe this may be a viable way forward, then our science needs to expand its horizons to include things beyond the quantifiable and replicable. Please don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, you can support the channel by purchasing some shirts at my merch shop, link below, or you can even become a patron, or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll be so grateful for it. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.